You're watching Study with Sudhir. This is your digital classroom. My name is T S Sudhir. We are looking at the Tempest Act 1 Scene 2 and this is part 5 video, explanation video of this particular very lengthy and important scene. But before I start, I just have an observation to make. One of the student subscribers in response to the part 3, which was the Ariel introduction scene, in which, if you would recall, I had actually spoken about the importance of Ariel as a character before I started the line by line explanation, right? That explanation and putting it in context and giving you an idea about what Ariel's character is like was important both from the point of view of understanding the character and also from the point of view of examination, so that when a question comes on Ariel's character, you are able to include all those points. Now, what did this very intelligent student subscriber, who I am not going to name, do? He wrote a comment saying, real video starts from 2 minutes 28 seconds. That's when the line by line explanation started. See, on Study with Sudhir, now for many months now, I don't waste time saying subscribe, ghanti bajao, do this, do that. I come directly to the lesson. Obviously, that explanation of Ariel and informing you about what you need to write in terms of the character analysis of an Ariel was so important. If you are not able to even understand and comprehend what is important for you and what is not important, I can't really do much about it. And therefore, if you think the real video starts from 2 minutes 28 seconds, keep that information and knowledge to yourself. Please do not mislead and misguide other students also. That's my limited appeal to all such enlightened souls. So now in explanation video number 5, we are going to be introduced to this character called Ferdinand. Of course, we saw him in Act 1, Scene 1 on board the ship as well. But now he has been there and we have already learned that he was the first one to jump off the ship. We are doing this part in 2 videos mainly because the element of music that Ariel sings is actually very important. In all Shakespeare's plays, music plays a very important part. More so in the Tempest, which is why I am going to do the first part of Ferdinand and Ariel and the second part more about Ferdinand, Miranda and Prospero, when Ferdinand and Miranda are really completely in love at first sight, right? So now, let's start. Ariel is the one who has re-entered this particular scene after the exit of Caliban, about who we saw in explanation video number 4. Now, Ferdinand is following and Ariel is conscious of the fact. Now, Ferdinand cannot see Ariel and Ariel is conscious of the fact that Ferdinand is actually listening to the song but can't see who is actually singing this song. So, there are these 2 songs that you need to be aware of and their importance in the play The Tempest and what kind of messaging is being implied through these 2 songs. That is what is important as far as this particular part of Act 1 Scene 2 is concerned. Come unto these yellow sands and then takes hands, curtsies when you have and kiss the wild waves whilst, foot it featly here and there and sweet sprites the burden bear. Okay. In terms of the weight and the depth of the song, the lyrics are pretty juvenile, right? They are very childish, you know, they are not kind of, you know, very deep in their meaning, right? But what is important about this particular these particular words is that come onto the yellow sands. It's pretty a literal kind of meaning. He talks about the wild waves of the ocean and he says that they are silent, and he talks about how the dance should be graceful. Now, what Ariel is actually doing at this point in time is that he is playing and singing as he is actually leading Ferdinand, who cannot see him, onto the shore of the island and closer to where Miranda and Prospero are at that point in time. And he is also speaking at the same time to the other spirits who are also invisible, right? To the other spirits around Ariel. Ariel is actually indicating to them that they should actually put or hush the wild waves into a state of silence, right, as they go about imitating the dance. So he's welcoming Ferdinand onto the island of which is being inhabited now by Prospero and Miranda, and there are the sounds of dogs and roosters in the distance and the graceful music playing in order to soothe his troubled spirit. Why is his spirit troubled? Why is his spirit in a disturbed state of mind? That's because he feels that everyone else who was on board that ship, including his father, the King of Naples, has actually perished in the tempest. So the music seems to Ferdinand like a supernatural presence, that he thinks that it is some spirits who are actually singing, because he cannot see Ariel or the other attendant spirits. So he is unable to locate who is actually singing that song, who is the source of those songs and lyrics. And at the same time, it's important to note that this particular song, even though the lyrics are pretty juvenile, as I said, has some kind of a soothing influence on Ferdinand. That's again something very important. And why is the soothing influence so important is for two reasons. One, to kind of help him overcome the grief of his father, who he thinks is no more. Number two, after the entire trauma of having faced and endured the storm, the tempest, right? So that's why this particular song is important. There will be two songs. This is the first of the two songs. Ferdinand. Now, this particular piece of dialogue is important also from an examination point of view. Where should this music be? In the air or the earth? It sounds no more, and sure it waits upon some god of the island, sitting on a bank, weeping again. The king, my father's wreck, this music crept by me upon the waters, allaying both their fury and my passion with its sweet air, and thence I have followed it, or it hath drawn me rather, but it is gone. So he's now wondering where this particular music has actually come from. Now, when he's using the word passion, he's actually referring to grief, right? So he's saying, where is this music actually coming from? He's wondering because he cannot see. Is it in the air or is it coming from this island, the earth itself? Oh, now it has stopped. So now he realizes that the music is no longer being heard. So he therefore associates it with some god who must be the presiding deity of this particular remote island. And he says that while I was sitting on this bank and crying over the wreck of my father and the other people who don't seem to be alive anymore, this music crept by me. Now, usually you use the word creeping in a slightly negative kind of a sense, but he is almost feeling like, this music has come and entered his life, his ears, in that sense. That's why the use of the word crept, as if it was on the waters. Even the waters of the sea, they keep creeping onto the shore, right? Any beach that you would have seen. And they are kind of calming my passion, that is my grief. This music is having the effect of having a calming influence on my grief, right? And it's also having the calming effect on the sea waves. So he's alluding both to the sea waves as well as the grief inside his heart with its sweet sound. The air is referring to the sweet sound of that music. So in that sense, it's a compliment to the quality of Ariel's music. Thence I have followed it, and I have followed it from there, or rather it has drawn me. That is, the song has attracted me towards it. But now it is gone. It's no longer to be heard. And then it says, oh no, it begins again. So he's kind of reacting to it. So you can imagine it on the stage. The song is playing, the Ferdinand is getting drawn to the song, then it stops, he reacts it, and by the time he finishes dialogue, it starts playing again. So Ariel is almost like, playing a game with Ferdinand, because he can see, he can hear what Ferdinand and how Ferdinand is reacting to his song, and therefore now he decides, now that he has got a compliment and an admission of the fact that it is helping him overcome his grief, he decides to play this song again. if we have to know the impact, if you get a question on the impact of Ariel's music, it is obviously no ordinary music, mainly because of the state of mind that Ferdinand is in at that point in time. It has its impact immediately, one on the forces of nature as in the wild waves, and also on the mind of the prince, that is Ferdinand. It decreased the fury of the tempest, the wild waves that kind of rose when the tempest was on, and also the grief in his heart. So in that sense, it has a soothing kind of an effect, right? Now let's move on. Now he sings the second song. Full fathom 5, thy father lies, of his bones are coral made. This song is important both in the context of the play and also from the examination point of view. Those are pearls that were his eyes, nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. Sea nymphs hourly ring his knell, right? Now he's basically informing him, Ariel is informing him that your father has actually perished. So in that sense, he is misleading him. He is misleading Ferdinand at that point in time. He says, your father lies 7.5 miles down on the seabed. His bones are now made of coral. Coral, if you have, any one of you have actually gone down to the seabed, you find, if you have ever done a sea walk, right, you find a whole lot of corals, etc. on the seabed. In fact, I'm going to put this, I'm putting up this photograph where I had gone with my wife and family to the seabed of the Andamans, right. So you see a whole lot of these corals which would be there, and of course a whole lot of marine life like fish. Now those are pearls that were his eyes. So he says his eyes have now transformed to pearls. Nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change. He says nothing of him has actually faded, but actually has changed as a result of the effect of being inside the sea into something rich and strange. So he believes that those pearls and corals are even richer than the fact that he was the king of Naples. Sea nymphs hourly ring his knell. So he says sea spirits are ringing his death bell, knell as in bell, every hour. Now this is a bit of a lie, because obviously soon, within hours of someone dying, those eyes are not going to change into pearls, the bones are not going to change into corals. That does not happen even naturally. So it's obviously he is telling him a lie and thereby misleading him. So Ariel is basically now addressing Ferdinand directly. Unlike the first song where he was just leading him on, now Ariel is talking directly to Ferdinand, even though Ferdinand cannot see him, right? He is invisible, and he is confirming Ferdinand's fears that the king of Naples has actually drowned and died. And he says that he is lying at the bottom of the sea, where every part of the body has actually decayed and has been transformed into different rich sea substances, marine substances like pearls and corals, right? Now Ferdinand is convinced that the music that he is hearing, of course he can't see the person who is actually singing that song, is actually in the memory of his father who is no more, who was drowned and got killed, and therefore it must be having some kind of a heavenly quality, right? Some kind of a divine quality to it, the song. Now after this, let's move on to the next bit. Hark now I hear them, ding dong bell. Ferdinand, the ditty does remember my drowned father. The ditty is the song, the little song, the short song that he has heard, and he says that remembers his drowned father. This is no mortal business, nor so sound that the earth owes. I hear it now above me. So he says this is definitely not the act of any person on earth. It is now, so he basically believes that it has some kind of a divine, ethereal kind of a quality. Prospero now enters the scene. Prospero says, the fringed curtains of thine eye advance and say what thou seest beyond. The fringed curtains, basically the curtains are basically a reference to the eyelids, right? So he says the fringed curtains of thine eye advance. Advance is, giving a life, they are wide open, and say what you see out there. He's now talking to Miranda. Miranda says, what is it? Is it a spirit? Lord, how it looks about. Believe me, sir, it carries a brave form, but it is a spirit. Now, Miranda, it's important that all her life, right, from the age of 3 to the age of 15 that she is now, has never seen anyone apart from Prospero and Caliban on that island. Ariel, of course, she cannot see. So, those are the only 2 people who she has seen. So, when she sees Ferdinand, she believes that it cannot be a human being, it must be a spirit. That's how she sees, and she says it has a strong shape, right? That's how she describes him, brave form. That's how you need to remember it. Prospero, no wench. Wench means a girl. It eats and sleeps and has such senses as we have such. So he says that no, it's a human being like you and me. This gallant which thou seest was in the wreck, but he is something stained with grief, that beauty is canker. Thou mightest call him a goodly person. He hath lost his fellows and strays about to find them. So he says no, he eats and sleeps and has the same 5 senses as you and me. So he was there in the wreck of the ship which has now gone down, and he is obviously therefore somewhat distraught and troubled as a result of the grief of having lost all the people on that ship, right? The grief, and he refers to the grief as a beauty's worm. Now the canker is a worm that feeds upon flowers. So he is personifying grief as a worm that eats the flowers, right? So he says you can call him a goodly person, but he has definitely lost his fellow sailors, the mariners, and therefore he is wandering around in his search for those sailors who we know are on different parts of that island. Miranda, I might call him a thing divine, for nothing natural I ever saw so noble. So she says, but I would call him a divine person because I have never seen someone who is so noble. So it is love at first sight as far as Miranda is concerned, and Prospero is obviously able to gauge from the tone and tenor of his daughter that his daughter is actually falling in love with Ferdinand, and that's indeed part of Prospero's plan. Prospero, on an aside which Miranda can't hear, it goes on just the way, I see, he had obviously planned it, and this is the way it is going. As my soul prompts it, spirit, fine spirit, I will free thee within 2 days for this. So he's obviously now feeling very happy. So he's telling Ariel, because he knows Miranda can't hear when he talks in an aside to the audience, but Ariel can hear him. So he says, this is just like what I really wanted. And he says, spirit, that is Ariel, I will actually free you within 2 days because I'm happy with what you have actually achieved. Ferdinand now says, most sure the goddess on whom these heirs attend, vouchsafe my prayer, may know if you remain upon this island, and that you will some good instruction give how I may bear me here. My prime request, which I do last pronounce, is, oh, you wonder if you be made or no. So now Ferdinand has also cast his eyes on Miranda. So he says he also believes that she must be a goddess, because again he did not believe that there was anyone on this island, and he's already heard the song. So he's already under the spell that there is some kind of a divine spirit moving around on this island. So he says, please grant my prayer, vouchsafe my prayer, to know if you live on this island, that you will be able to teach me how I can actually survive here on this island. And he says, that's my prime request, my primary request, which I say, and you are a wonder, a miracle. And he says, whether you are a single woman, that means whether you are married or not. If you be made in this sense means whether you are married or not married. Miranda, I am not a miracle, no wonder, she says, I am not a miracle, but certainly I am single, I am not married. Ferdinand, my language, heavens, I am the best of them that speak this speech, where it is spoken. So he's now feeling very happy that Miranda can actually communicate with him in exactly the language that he speaks and understands. So he's obviously delighted with finding someone human like him. So he says that I am the best of those who speak this speech. That is, here the arrogance, or rather the pride in being royal comes through, because he says, I am the best of them who speaks this speech. That is, among the people who actually speak this language, I am the best. He is obviously the prince of Naples. How the best? Wert thou you, if the king of Naples heard thee? So now Prospero wants to tease him and test him. He says, how can you be the best? And how would it be if the king of Naples actually heard you saying something like this? Ferdinand, a single thing as I am now that wonders to hear thee speak of Naples. So he says, well, I am quite amazed to hear you actually speak of the king of Naples, right? A single thing essentially means that I am a solitary creature out here, right? I am a solitary creature, that you are actually speaking of Naples. He does hear me, but and that he does, I weep myself, I am Naples. So he says, I am the king of Naples. And why is he referring to himself as the king of Naples? Because he believes that his father has died, perished in the shipwreck, and therefore now he is the king of Naples. So even if Prospero says that how would it be if the king of Naples actually heard you saying something like this, bragging about yourself being the best who can speak this language, he says, well, indeed, I am the king of Naples, who with mine eyes never since at ebb beheld the king my father wrecked. So he says, I am Naples, who saw, and I am so overcome with grief and am not stopped crying and grieving because I saw my father, the king of Naples, actually getting drowned in the shipwreck. Miranda, alack for mercy, how sad. She feels, obviously, she reacts with an element of shock. Though she has heard about the shipwreck earlier, she now reacts with shock because of the personal loss of this gentleman before him. Ferdinand, yes, faith, and all his lords, the Duke of Milan and his brave son being twain. He says, and believe me, all his lords, the Duke of Milan. The Duke of Milan here refers to who? Antonio, right? So he says Antonio was also there and his brave son being two of those lost. So he is talking about all the other people who were on board that ship who have also been killed in the bargain, right? So we will pause here as far as the first part, that part 5 is concerned. But before I end, I also want to talk to you a little more about this particular song and what actually happens in this particular part of the scene. Now, the importance of the song, the two songs that Ariel sung in this scene is that they are the aim is to assist the dramatic action of the play, the Tempest, in this part. Also to calm the tempest at sea, and also Ferdinand's grief over the so-called supposed demise of his father. So there is, in that sense, a dramatic function that music is actually playing in this part of Act 1, Scene 2. The other thing is the manner in which Ariel plays this song or sings this song and leads Ferdinand towards Miranda. That itself, that's another role that the music actually plays, right? So in that sense, the words that have been used, the lyrics which have been used, especially in the first song, the wild waves whilst, basically to talk about the wild waves. So the wildness of the waves are also a reference to the Tempest. They also refer to the political rivalry between the King of Naples and the Duke of Milan in the past. The Duke of Milan, now I am referring to Prospero. Between the hatred and the political rivalry and what all had happened, the manner in which Prospero and Miranda were thrown out of Milan with the help of Antonio and the King of Naples. So now it's talking about how this will be the beginning of a new era, as it were, a new innings in which Ferdinand and Miranda will be the principal characters. So where the essential emotion will now be that of love and not of hatred or any other kind of rivalry. So Ferdinand, through this song, is also being invited to a new life where the principal virtues are those of love, of fruition, of some kind of a marriage, right? That's the other function which this song is playing. Now, in the second song that we heard about, in which he is telling Ferdinand, informing Ferdinand, or rather misguiding Ferdinand about his father's real state under the sea. So it is basically creating an illusion. So the two songs you need to be very mindful of what is the purpose of singing that song. So he is creating an illusion that Ferdinand's father, that is the King of Naples, has actually drowned, and this particular scene, this illusion that is being created, is also an extension of the magic that Prospero uses in order to, with the help of Ariel, to create that whole illusion of whatever happened on board the ship and the sea. So basically, it is an illusion that all of them believe. Ferdinand, when he sees Miranda, he believes that it's some kind of a divine person. When Miranda sees Ferdinand, she also believes that he is some kind of a, she calls him that he must be some kind of a spirit, right? So even though Prospero is trying to tell her, she is not really listening to him because she is kind of so taken in by the physical appearance of Ferdinand, right? So that is what is Prospero's entire game plan, that he wants to bring Miranda and Ferdinand together because he sees that as a route to get his dukedom of Milan back. Now the other part about this particular song, the second song that was played, Full Fathom Fi Thy Father Lies, is basically talking about an imagery that talks about coral for bones of the king of Naples and pearls for his eyes, and therefore trying to kind of reduce Ferdinand's pain, because by saying that, you know, this is so good that has already happened to your father's dead body, right? So in that sense, that becomes the central theme of the play, which is basically talking about forgiveness, moving on, and some kind of reconciliation at the end of the Tempest. So the first step is actually taken with the help of this song by Ariel. So that is something which you need to remember. We will do part 6, in which we are going to be more aware of the love of Ferdinand and Miranda. There are some very important dialogue sequences in part 6, the last part of Act 1 Scene 2, which we should do in the next one day or so. Thank you very much for watching.